For months, there has been an underground movement by the Republican Party in Michigan to sow chaos in the 2022 election. Their goal is to create a, quote, army of poll workers and Republican lawyers to challenge the vote in heavily Democratic and minority precincts. This is according to video and video recordings, to be more precise, of GOP operatives meeting with grassroots activists in Michigan that were obtained by Politico. The effort is being presented by Republicans as a way to even out what they claim are party imbalances among poll workers in urban areas like Detroit and identify instances of voter fraud. But do they really think Americans are that naive? As election watchdog groups are pointing out, many of these recruits are volunteering because they are 2020 election deniers. And if they are able to create enough noise, if they are able to create enough chaos, they would give GOP-controlled state legislators an excuse to do what they did not do in 2020. Intervene and submit their own slate of electors. That's what they wanted to do, but weren't able to pull off. The effort exemplifies the lengths that the GOP is actually willing to go to when institutionalizing the big lie for future elections. Now, this plan, of course, is not revolutionary. In fact, it was first developed over a decade ago by Arizona lawyer Dan Schultz. More recently, the precinct strategy has been pushed by none other than former Trump strategist Steve Bannon. I want you to listen to him bragging during an episode of The War Room just last November.
We're not complaining about it more. Remember, there are no whining and no tears in the war room. We're taking action. And that action is we're taking over school boards, we're taking over the Republican Party through the precinct committee strategy, we're taking over all the elections.
That's saying the quiet part out loud. That strategy would only make it easier for GOP-controlled legislators to overturn an election result they did not like based on an excuse they deemed to be worthy. And of course, what would such a plan be without Trump's stamp of approval? He writes, quote, if members of our great movement start getting involved, that means you becoming a precinct committeeman for your voting precinct. We can take back our great country from the ground up. And this summer, the Republicans' months-long effort will be put to the test because according to Matthew Seyfried, the RNC's election integrity director for Michigan, GOP officials are planning to use the August 2nd primary elections in Detroit as a dry run for the elections in November. We have a lot to break down here, and this is a dangerous moment for our country. Here to help me make sense of all of this, Susan Del Percio, Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst and NBC News Think contributor, and Rick Hasen, Chancellor's Professor of Law and Political Science at UC Irvine. He is also the author of Cheap Speech, How Disinformation Poisons Our Politics and How to Cure It. It's great to have both of you with us. Susan, I'd like to start with you. How unusual is it for political parties to get this involved with poll workers? I mean, as Detroit election clerk Janice Winfrey explained it in this article, she writes in part, before every election, we always reach out to both the Democratic and Republican parties to let them know we are recruiting poll workers, and we get what we get, or mostly Democrats and majority Democratic voting city. So how could the RNC even think that no one was going to catch on to this full court press to recruit Republican poll watchers and poll workers in predominantly Democratic precincts?
Okay, in every precinct, whether it be Michigan or most other states, they want a Democrat and a Republican. It's not that this is so sinister. What's sinister is the rhetoric being used in the recruitment. But to have Republicans in Detroit as poll watchers is welcomed by the state Secretary of State who administers the elections. It's part of democracy, one Democrat, one Republican. I've been doing it, well, not recently, but 30 years ago when I started out, I recruited poll workers. And let me tell you, just because they make this announcement, they have all these people signed up, it's very hard to get people to actually do it. It's a 16-hour day. You have to go in for 2 training sessions. You get paid minimum wage. And most people end up not wanting to follow it all the way through. But there is actually absolutely nothing wrong with both parties recruiting election day workers. Very normal, very common. What we have not seen is this sense of being a sinister plot from Republicans, like we're going to get back and do something.
Yeah.
There is also one other downfall, though, which I would be very concerned about, and that is the way these people are being recruited and spoken to. They are too connected to the party organization or maybe a political organization to interfere and perhaps delay the count of ballots at a particular polling site. And that could lead to elections being fought out in the courts. It could take a long time to get results. And that disruption is what's dangerous to our democracy.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're making that distinction, Rick, because I, recently spoke to Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson just this past Wednesday about concerns surrounding this effort. And we did make the distinction between what is a rightful, legitimate practice of both parties, but the intention behind what Republicans are doing. Take a listen to what she said to me.
That's part of the goal, as it was in 2020, to create chaos and confusion through even just the threat of interference that causes people to be reticent to vote or perhaps not show up to vote at all for fear that something might happen if they do. Now, under our law, there are specific ways in which and reasons in which someone can be challenged. And so keeping an eye on, again, the abuse of that very important transparency mechanism is something we'll be doing throughout Election Day. We'll be ready on Election Day as well to have eyes and ears on the ground to essentially, if we see any abuse or interference or intimidation of voters, to swiftly, in partnership with local law enforcement and others, address it and ensure that it doesn't interfere with our elections process.
You and I, Rick, have talked about this in the past, generally that our system has these loopholes or legitimate ways that are now potentially being exploited to undermine the very democracy. And this is a good example of it. What do you make of her argument? I mean, is that going to be enough to stop all out chaos at the polls? Republicans create and they sow chaos, confusion. It overwhelms the system. It just, burdens it. GOP-controlled legislators step in and say, hey, we got to take control of this, and we designate the electors the way we see fit.
Well, I think we'll have a better sense of it when we see how things go in August during the primary. But, the important thing is having bipartisan poll workers, not just poll watchers, is a good thing for democracy. So I agree on that point. The main problem here is that these people are being told that the last election was stolen. They're being primed to challenge voters, and they might be put in Democratic areas. Maybe there are large immigrant communities where people don't speak English, and they're going to be challenged based on lack of citizenship or something like that. That could gum up the works. But the part of the Politico story that makes me the most concerned is this claim that these workers are being told that if you see something going on at the polling place, you should contact Republican Party lawyers, and they can then use judges that they've created relationships with to try to interfere with the voting process. That is, rather than going up the chain of command, if you're a poll worker, you report it to your supervisor and election administrators take care of it. It's trying to get the parties involved at this very early stage in a way that really could muck things up at polling places. And we'll have to see how it goes, but that's the part that's really concerning.
Susan, do you think we collectively as a society, and that also includes people who are responsible for the way our elections are conducted and ensuring their integrity, have they been asleep over the past 2 years while Republicans have been making these plots and trying to come up with these new schemes to overturn our elections or to have the ability to overturn them should they choose? I mean, how concerned should we be that we are not prepared for what Republicans have been scheming for the past 2 years?
Again, I don't know how much of a scheme it is, because I know Republicans who've been doing this for decades, trying to get poll watchers in. It's or poll workers in and sending out poll watchers who then do report because they're with the party organization. They report back to headquarters and get lawyers on the scene for potentially impounding ballots if necessary. But what my biggest concern is the rhetoric around this, what it's suggesting. It's suggesting that there is already something inherently wrong with the system, which there is not. What's inherently wrong is what the Steve Bannons and the National Republican Party is trying to lay as a foundation for people to go to work at the polls and then automatically say, oh, I don't like the way this person looks, or sign their name, so you're not going to be able to vote. So Rick is right. There's a lot of procedures that should be followed, and poll workers should go through the chain of command. But, there is something we would be amiss about saying, is that Steve Bannon in that clip you showed, he's talking about electing county clerks who oversee their county elections. Well, that's stuff Republicans have been doing for a long time and things that Democrats have been ignoring for decades. So I would say this should be a wake-up call to Democrats to make sure the posts are being competitive when there are elections for those posts, and that there are both Democrats at every Republican polling district as well.
Rick, there have been attempts by Michigan Republicans to introduce new voting restrictions continuously, but they have failed because of the Democratic governor of that state. Gretchen Whitmer has been vetoing them. Do you see this as just a new underground way to get around her and her ability to stop these restrictions because they don't have the governorship, at least for now?
Well, the key point is that when we elect a president, we have 10,000 different election jurisdictions. Power is distributed between the legislature, the governor, the secretary of state, the local election administrators, even down to the poll working place. And so what I see is on the part of the Trumpist wing of the Republican Party is looking for the weak places where it's possible to mess with the ways in which we translate people's votes into actually producing a winner, and looking for the vulnerabilities so that if there is an opportunity to try to change election results, that's something that is in the cards. And so I think it's a multi-pronged attack that's going to require a multi-pronged response, not just from Democrats, but from Republicans as well, who are committed to fair elections and the rule of law.
Let me switch gears, if I can, really quickly before I lose both of you. Susan, this afternoon, former Trump White House advisor Peter Navarro was indicted on contempt of Congress charges after ignoring a subpoena from January 6th and its committee seeking testimony and documents. Put this into context for us. How big of a deal is this ahead of next week's testimony? We understand from the U.S. Attorney's Office that he is in custody at this moment.
It's very significant because Peter Navarro is someone who was one of the architects of this big lie. I mean, he called it something else. I forget off the top of my head, but this is significant. Plus, it also shows that there's movement from the Justice Department moving into the hearing. So it's kind of a nice setup, even though I hope it wasn't done for that purpose.